The following story has been brought to you by StoriesToInspire.org.
The Heilige Chofetz Chaim was once traveling, selling his svarim, and he came to a certain town between Mincha and Ma'ariv. A fellow comes over to him and says, "I have 5 rubles. Will you give me 4 rubles change? I want to pay you back a ruble." Says, "Why?" He says, "You weren't here before I took a sefer, and there was nobody to pay, so I want to pay the ruble now." The Chofetz Chaim said, "Look, I don't know when you took a sefer. I can't do business like that. I'm not sure. I can't take money from you." Sofik, ich weiß nicht, ich kenne nicht. So the fellow said, "Rebbe, you caught me. I'll tell you the emes. I didn't take a sefer from you, but I want to have the schus to give a matan. I want to help support the Chofetz Chaim. So I thought this would be a good way to give you. I don't have a lot of money, but a ruble I can give the Chofetz Chaim. Let me give you the ruble." Chofetz Chaim said, "No, I will accept no matanas from anyone. If you want, you can give a donation to the yeshiva. So that will give me a nachas ruach." So he said, "Fine, because I have got 5 rubles. I can't afford more than a ruble." So the Chofetz Chaim took out, he had a strong box where he kept his money, and he took it out, and the fellow grabbed it and ran off. Inside that box were 400 rubles, which was all the money the Chofetz Chaim had saved to print the next volume of the Mishnah Berurah. And the people began running, grab him. The Chofetz Chaim said, leave him. Maybe he has a daughter he has to marry off. Don't chase it." Now there are many things one can learn from this story. Chofetz Chaim's Ahavas Yisroel, the Chofetz Chaim's Midas HaChesed. But let us try to fathom the Menuchas HaNefesh. A man just came and fooled him and swiped away his life savings. He didn't lose himself for him, and he didn't start screaming, and that's nothing. Complete Menucha, complete Shlita, complete control over himself. That's Menuchas HaNefesh. I once, as a bocher, was traveling to a friend's chassan, and the fellow was getting married in Long Island. I was going with another fellow, and somehow we had a mistake in directions, and we were very, very late. We wanted very much to be there for the chuppah. And after we step, and he was speeding and going, trying to make sure to get to the chassan on time. And neither of us, we were both bochrim, so we didn't yet even think of such a thing as asking for directions. And after you're married, you're told you have to sometimes stop to ask for directions. There was no such a thing. And we were just going till finally it was getting late. We had long missed the chuppah. And we pull into a gas station, just tell us, how do we get to Long Island? And the fellow says, "Hey man, you're closer to Boston than you are to Long Island." Says, "Rebbeinu Shalom," means we were speeding along in a completely wrong direction. Sometimes, if the direction, the purpose of the journey of life is to get to Menucha, we crave Menucha. Why do we get into Kas? Because our Menucha is disturbed. I want peace. If it doesn't go my way, I can't find the parking space with the way I need it. But I have to wait an extra few minutes, so my Menucha is disturbed. So I replace it with more chaos. Interesting. Chaos. How is that going to help me? It's going to destroy me. Reb Eliyel Apian told a Ma'aseh Noire. There was a man in town who was an angry, nasty man, and every child, all the children hated him. The Orchos Tzadikim says, "Abal kas ein loy chen." Chen, you have again the ches and the nun. He has no menucha, he has no chen, because chen is otherworldly. It comes from above the person. It's matnas chinom. And the children despised this man, the angry man in town. And one day the news came out, the man was dying, he's on his deathbed, and the Chevra Kadisha surrounding his bed. And the kids didn't want to miss this. And they all ran over to his house, and they were climbing in the windows to watch the Yetzias Neshama. And the man is lying on his bed, and his last koiches, he sees the kids in the window. And he lifts himself up and he shakes his fist, "Get down from that window right now!" And at that moment was Yetzias Neshama. Could you imagine? At a time when he should have been saying, "Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad," he worshipped Avodah Zarah. That's where this could take us. It's like a locomotive hurtling along, pounding on the tracks towards oblivion. We're going in the opposite direction of where we want to go. By tzaddikim, the central focus of their existence was Menuchas HaNefesh. By the Heilige Chazon Ish, was sometimes had so no koyach, he exerted himself with such yagir. There were times, he says, he didn't even have the strength to pick up a pen. He was so exhausted. He wasn't a well man. And one night there was a fellow who had to talk to him. And he came in, and the mishpacha was around. They said, "Look, the Chazon Ish is so weak, he can't see." When he had no koyach at all, he would close the door. That was it. Otherwise, he would see people. And the fellow was very insistent. He wanted very much. So he went around to the other side, and he crawled in through the window, and he came to the Chazon Ish's room. And he spoke to the Chazon Ish. Had no koyach, couldn't even answer him. The next day, he felt very bad. So he went into the Chazon Ish when he had no koyach. So he went to ask the Chazon Ish, "I hope the Rebbe wasn't angry at me. So he said, angry at you? The only reason I could think of to be angry at you is that you'll choshed me, that you suspect that I don't understand that sensation. I don't know what it means. That's why he writes in a letter. The Chazon Ish writes, Ani machzik es hakabdonus lemeguna mo'oid, something very detestable, kabdonus, anger, nastiness. The Heilige Zlotcher Magid owned a pair of tefillin that was priceless, belonged to his Elter Zayde, and he was very, very poor, and there was nothing to eat in the house to feed his wife and children. His wife begged him many times, if you sell this tefillin, you can make a lot of money, and we could support ourselves. And how could I sell the Zayde's tefillin? One day it was Erev Sukkot, and there was no esrog to be found. And there was one person in another town who had an esrog, and he was demanding an exorbitant price for it. And his Lordship Magid went and sold his Zayde's tefillin and took that money and bought the esrog. And he came dancing into the house. Ach, I've getroffen a esrog. I've got a beautiful esrog. The Rebbe said, who? Nobody has an esrog. Where did you get the money to pay for this esrog? He said, I sold the tefillin. And this Heilige Tzadikis, Shengenuk, she couldn't take it. She said, what? After all, I was starving. I begged you so many times to sell the tefillin. Now you sold it to buy an esrog that's going to last for 7 days. And she took the esrog and she threw it and broke the pittim. And his Lordship Magid turned to the Rebbeinu Shalom. He said, Tata Zisa, the tefillin I lost, the esrog I lost. You think now I'm going to lose my temper? Oh no. And that night his father came to him in a cholim and he said, the first ma'aseh that you gave away your tefillin to buy the esrog caused such a commotion in Shamayim, the Mesiras Nefesh. But it didn't compare to the second Nisayon. When you were oimed in the Nisayon of Kas, you created a storm in Shamayim. That Nisayon was far greater than the first one. Menuchas HaNefesh, Rabbi Yisrael. I know a Yid HaTzadik, Talmud of the great Tzadikim of the Doros before the Mulchama. He learned Barabanis for Rabbaran's first Talmidim. He lived in Lakewood, going back many, many years. And one day he came home. He lived on a second floor apartment, and he saw that his 3 little toddler-age kids had crawled out of the second floor window, and they were standing on a ledge. And he looked up and he said, go inside. And they came inside, and he took them, and he gave each one a patch like they deserved. Now, had he lost himself, like would have been the normal reaction, it would have been a tragedy. And he said, oi, get in! Menuchas HaNefesh saved the lives of his children. Years later, I heard the story from his son. He told me that one of his daughters once opened up the closet to her house, to one of the doors of the closet, and a cat jumped out. Well, it can happen sometimes. A cat sneaks into a house, and she started screaming, a cat, the cat. She ran all over the house hysterical. That he never remembers his father giving a child such a mussar shmuz. Was heißt? Was heißt me verliert sich? A Yid loses himself. Who knows what could happen, what could go next? And then he told her the story. Do you know where you would be if I would lose myself? And he told her the story, what happened to her when she had crawled out on the ledge of that window. When one has Menuchas HaNefesh, the Chofetz Chaim could stand there. When somebody took his box with 400 rubles, that means he's invincible. That means he can overcome any obstacle that comes his way. As the Pasuk says, Toiv Erech Apayim Migibor Umoishel Beruchoy Miloi Keit Ir. A general who conquers a country doesn't compare to the power of one who has Menuchas HaNefesh. Because Menuchas HaNefesh is the foundation of fortitude. It's the cradle of courage. It's what makes us royalty. We are a melech. There was a Yid HaTzadik in Yerushalayim, Rav Shmuel Humana, wrote the Sefer Eved HaMelech, a Moedik Tzaddik. He said he knew an old man in Yerushalayim who was the most tranquil and calm person he ever met. Nothing fazed him. And we talk about, we don't mean someone who's just carefree and happy-go-lucky. We mean tranquility. A serious person who's be'etzem has found inner peace. He said, where did you get this? He said, I'll tell you, my nature was exactly the opposite. I was so evil-tempered. I was so impossible. I learned in Radin. And one day the Chofetz Chaim called me out of the Beis Medrash, and he took me by the hand, and he started stroking my hand, and he walked me up and down for 2 hours, just repeating, Savlonis, 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 for 2 hours. And ever since then I haven't been the same. The Chofetz Chaim put menucha into me. The koyach, when one has menucha, to bring menucha into others. Imagine if we were to hear the news that there's a circus train has been traveling through town, and the car holding the tigers broke open, and there's 5 Siberian tigers running loose all over town. Imagine. And we advise nobody should leave his house. Keep yourself on the locked doors. A sakana to go out? No, there'd be no yeshiva, there'd be no davening, there'd be no shul. Everything, all avodas Hashem would stop. When Kas is on the loose, there's a tiger on the loose. There's a chayat toirif on the loose. You can't even begin avodas Hashem. Imagine a person has to go out. Kuach nefesh, he's got a hatzalah call on his own, he's got to go out. If he knows there are tigers out there, he's somewhat safer. But imagine a person doesn't even know. He's just happily walking down the street, not even realizing what's waiting, what's lurking there in the darkness. The person is doomed. So our first avodah that the Rambam teaches us is heilige igeres, is to be aware that this is not a simple matter, that nothing can even begin until this matter is addressed. Because kol hakoyes kol mine gehenim sholten boy. And we have a tzivui of hoser kas milibecho v'haver ro mibsarecho. The Rebbeinu Shalom should give us the koiches hanefesh, that we should be able to live and serve Him according to our good ritzonos and the das that we know. We should be the kind of yodata hayoim v'hashevoyse levavecho v'zoichet v'makabu pnei Mashiach tzidkeinu me'emenu. Amen.
Enjoyed this story? Come again. Bring a friend. StoriesToInspire.org